The deputy's hand was already up when Noah Bennett stepped out of the truck. Gravel crunched under his boots. His coffee sat untouched on the hood. He had been checking a dock piling before winter, not expecting anything more dramatic than a little maintenance and a quiet morning on the water. Then Renata Voss rolled in beside the cruiser, got out, and pointed at him like he had stolen the place in front of her eyes. She carried herself with the kind of certainty that only comes from years of being obeyed. The lake stayed perfectly still behind them. Noah did not. In a matter of seconds, a routine property visit had turned into a public confrontation, and the worst part was that Renata believed she already had the law on her side. She had no idea a filing existed in the county index that would destroy that certainty before the day was over. Noah had spent years looking for land that felt private, quiet, and worth protecting. Old Mill Lake looked like exactly that, a small body of water tucked behind Millbrook Estates, with a dock, a gravel lane, and enough space to breathe. The neighborhood itself was polished and orderly, with 214 homes, trimmed lawns, flower beds, and a homeowners association that acted like the gatekeeper of everything around it. For more than 2 decades, the HOA had treated the lake as if it belonged to them. They issued passes, collected lake fees, posted rules, and behaved like the parcel was part of their control. Renata Voss had led the board for 11 years, and by then her dark pink jackets and icy confidence had become part of the neighborhood's routine. Noah had done his homework before closing. The lake was a separate tax parcel, privately owned, never deeded to the HOA, and the only document tying the community to the water was a permissive use letter from 2001. The key detail was buried in plain sight: that letter could be revoked. The first strike came quickly. Renata did not ask questions or verify records. She treated Noah's deed like an inconvenience and his ownership like a misunderstanding that could be corrected through pressure. The deputy asked for identification, and Noah handed it over with the calm of someone who had already checked the facts. In the truck seat beside him sat a manila envelope with the deed, title commitment, and tax records showing the parcel as private land. Renata kept pressing the same argument, using the sign at the gate and the community's long habit as if repetition could become ownership. 10 days later, the HOA escalated again with a violation notice. It accused Noah of restricting access to a shared amenity and threatened a daily fine that would make the property expensive to defend. That was the moment he understood the board was not just confused. They were going to force the issue no matter what the county records said. Renata answered with a flyer that went to every house in Millbrook Estates. It was designed to make the conflict feel personal, emotional, and urgent. Families by the dock. Children in the water. Years of summer memories used as proof of ownership the HOA never actually had. More than 80 residents showed up to the first meeting, and Noah stayed in the back while Renata built her case around community history, tradition, and fear. But the pressure did not stop there. The HOA's attorney sent a letter claiming a prescriptive easement through more than 20 years of use. Fines continued. A lien was threatened. The dispute spread across the neighborhood, and people who had never taken sides before started checking old paperwork and old assumptions. That is when Dorothea and Roland Pruitt quietly admitted they had been paying lake fees for years, even receiving fines for staying too long on the dock. Their reaction was not anger at Noah. It was disbelief at how long the neighborhood had mistaken habit for law. Then the county filing started to matter more than the HOA's speeches. The breaking point came when Noah's attorney, Callaway Whitfield, reviewed the HOA's position in silence and found the flaw instantly. The association's own files contained a 2001 permissive use letter from the original owner. That meant the HOA's use had never been hostile, and without hostility, their easement theory began to fall apart. Even better for Noah, he had already recorded a notice of non-permissive use and termination of access rights only days after closing. It was a simple filing, but it changed the timeline in a way the HOA could not undo. While Renata was building a public victory speech, the county index had already started telling a different story. The board had leaned so hard on signs, habits, and due statements that they failed to notice the legal ground disappearing beneath them. At that point, the next community meeting was no longer about neighborhood disagreement. It was a public test of whether the HOA had ever checked the one thing that mattered. The room at the community center was packed when Renata opened the meeting. She stood in a fully buttoned dark pink blazer, her curly golden hair perfect, her posture rigid, and her confidence untouched by doubt. The board projected lake photos, neighborhood memories, and carefully chosen images of children and families on the water, all meant to make the HOA's claim feel moral before it felt legal. Renata framed the situation as a fight for the community's future and treated Noah like an outsider trying to erase history. Then Noah stood. He did not need volume. He only needed the county-stamped filing in his hand. He reminded the room, through the paper itself, that the lake was already recorded as private property under his name. Whitfield's response had been filed as well, backed by the permissive use letter and the county index. The HOA attorney in the front row stopped looking at the screen and started looking at his phone. The energy in the room changed in real time. Renata's certainty did not explode. It drained. That silence, more than any argument, was the moment power shifted. The aftermath moved faster than the HOA expected. The prescriptive easement claim was withdrawn. The lien was released. Renata resigned from the board, and the neighborhood held a special election that replaced the old leadership with people who actually read the documents before acting. An audit followed, and it uncovered more than $148,000 in lake-related fees collected over the years from residents who had been paying for access to a property the HOA never legally owned. Some of that money went back into the neighborhood for legitimate maintenance. Some of it was returned to residents. The rest became a lesson that the community would not forget. Then Delia Hargrove, the new board president, arrived in a long dark pink coat and personally removed the laminated sign from Noah's gate. It had stood there for 22 years, and it came down in less than a minute. After that, the dock was repaired properly, the property lines were respected, and the lake finally felt peaceful again. Noah still saw neighbors like Dorothea and Roland, but now they arrived with respect instead of assumption. One filing changed everything. Not a shouting match. Not a threat. One stamped page. And that leaves one question worth asking: how many neighborhood wars were one county record away from ending all along?